For my comments, Latino refers to both Latinos and Latinas. I am concerned that a letter regarding districting was received in August and was withheld until after the election. In a safe harbor amendment to the election code, it states, if the city begins the process of switching to districts before receiving a notice letter or within 45 days of receipt of a notice and adopts a resolution to that effect under section 10010, a potential plaintiff cannot commence an action within 90 days of the resolution's passage. Well, you missed that deadline, and you also missed the October 16 deadline in the letter. I personally find this shakedown of Camarillo to be similar to the shakedown of businesses using the disguise of violations of the Persons with Disabilities Act. Considering the letter to Camarillo is very similar to letters received by other cities, I feel they have not proven, quote, voting in Camarillo is racially charged, end quote. There's no way to know how Latinos vote when our votes are protected by law. For all we know, Latinos have been voting for non-Latinos, and non-Latinos have been voting for Latinos. I know I voted for Latinos in previous elections. Camarillo is unlike other cities, and I think our recent election disputes some of the issues raised. First, we had Latinas run. If you only went by last name, then you might have thought that only one Latina ran. During the first debate, it was indicated that Latinos are underrepresented, but never has that been proven. Each and every citizen has the ability to speak before the City Council to ensure their interests are represented in decisions made, just like I did on the Berry Street project tonight. So how can they claim that, quote, the paucity of Latino candidates to seek election to the Camarillo City Council also reveals vote dilution? Or how can they prove that previous council members maybe were part Latino and that we just didn't know? Could it be that Latinos have different priorities and just choose not to run? Our ladies prove that there's nothing inhibiting Latinos from running. And even if we had districts, Latinos might not run or get elected. Second, 2 of the incumbents were not reelected. Therefore, the whole argument on incumbents being an issue goes away. The letter threatens the city without providing substantiated proof that the city violated the act. As compared to the Federal Voting Rights Act version, the CVRA has such a low threshold for proving violation, it forces cities like Camarillo to implement districts regardless of whether we want it or not because of the high cost of litigation. Therefore, I feel the city of Camarillo should challenge the CVRA as forcing cities to go to districting because of unreasonably lower thresholds than the federal version and allowing the Southwest Voter Registration Education Project to utilize an illegal loophole to shake down Camarillo. Bottom line, go with Fort Bragg and Santa Monica and fight it.
Thank you. Jessica Romero.
Hi there, Latina speaking here. Good evening, council members. I am just here to say that I support district voting and district elections. As many of you know, Ventura County has been identified to contain numerous communities in violation of the California Voting Rights Acts. Excuse me, because they have city councils that historically do not represent their protected status residents. They have also been identified as having polarized and diluted the opportunities for representation of Latinos. No city has yet to successfully won a challenge, and cities are either forced to comply or pay the cost of the counter lawsuit during litigation. Here in Camarillo, we have a population of Latinos that make up 22% of the overall population. And the last time we saw this community be represented on our city council was back in 1978. People of color want to run, and as previously stated, we have run, but there are other, it's pretty hard to run against incumbents or likewise. So also, district elections level the playing field for low-income neighborhoods. I just want to see better representation and diversity on our city council, and truthfully, 5 city council members who are white is not representative government to me. Thank you.
Tiffany Lewis.
Good evening, Tiffany Lewis. Okay, my time has started. I just want to provide a little bit of information. I do greatly look forward to seeing the reports that come out of the statistics and all of the different voting outcomes of the people of our city, because each city is individual. I look to Ventura. The city of Ventura recently had its first district elections, and it was very successful for their people of color in their community. They have the most diverse city council that they've ever had. Now, again, that's Ventura City. It's not Camarillo. They do have significantly more in their community than us, approximately 50,000 more citizens than the city of Camarillo. So not apples to apples per se, but we can see in our own community that districting is not necessarily a bad thing. I know a lot of people have feelings about it one way or another, but the statistics will show us a lot of information. And then also, I hope we're listening to the people in our communities. Obviously, we just had an election. I was out on the streets talking to a lot of people in our community, and I did hear the interest for districting. I was watching the presentation, and I did jot down a note about the elections code section 14028, section E4, which refers to the cost of running in an election. The cost of running Camarillo this last election was $1,000. It was $50 for the filing fee and $950 for the candidate statement, which I have heard many people say, if you can't put a candidate statement out, why even run? So I consider that as something you need to do. So it's $1,000, which is very costly for a lot of families here in Camarillo. And we do have people in our community who are very willing and capable and have a lovely background that could support our communities, but do not necessarily have $1,000 right off the bat to run for city council. So that interested me right there. So I think that's something that we should look into, and in the least. I know that Ventura, again, is not like us, but I do hope that we can learn something from them. Moore Park also recently went into districting. They made that decision in October, and we're seeing this in Santa Monica. Obviously, again, a different community, but they are approximately 9 square miles, and we're or other way, 8 square miles, we're 9. So our size is about the same, and our populations are about the same. So again, not apples to apples, but something somewhat comparable for us to look to and see what it may work for them. Thank you.
I just have a question for you. Did you say there was a filing fee to run for city council?
Yes, there is a filing fee. It's $50, and then it costs $950 for a candidate statement.
The candidate statement I understand, but I didn't realize there was a filing fee.
Correct.
Is that true, Jeffrey?
Yes, there is.
There is no filing fee, but I believe what she's referring to is the fee that they had to pay the Secretary of State to form the committee. And
that's right. And the people who didn't form committees didn't have to pay the Secretary of State. But that's not really a filing fee. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure people understood, because for some offices there is a filing fee, but in Camarillo we don't have a filing fee.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
I'm assuming people still feel compelled to pay that $50. So
Yeah, that's a state fee.
they still have to pay it.
They still have to pay it. I understand that.
Thank you.
Okay, the next one is Martha Martinez. I believe it's Bravo.
Good evening, everybody. I hope that you and your loved ones are all safe from all the tragedies that have been going on. I know it has been a hard past week, and as a parent, I can also tell you that has been difficult. I think just having the kids at home has been quite a challenge. You know, if you know me, I think you know that I am a very huge proponent of any data or any research. So I am definitely looking forward to hearing the stats on that. But I guess I just wanted to give my perspective. As you may know, I have a master's and a doctorate in clinical psychology, and there tend to be a huge discussion around race and racism, systemic racism, institutionalized racism, what that is and what it's not. And from what I understand as I'm hearing this, and I'm fairly new to the districting part, is that really this is an attempt to find equity among marginalized groups, to look at how systemically racism exists and what we can do to combat that. And while we may not all agree as to the pathways on how to get there, I think, and I'm hoping that most of you agree that systemic racism or institutionalized racism is an issue. So, when we look at dominant and subordinate groups, dominant groups, we're talking about a differential in terms of power, not in terms of number. Many times I hear, Latinos are not minorities because there's a lot of them. Well, that's not how it works. It's really about power differential, socio-political power. And so ethnic minorities here in Camarillo are a marginalized group. Just because they're living here in Camarillo, it doesn't make them exempt. And so really, when you look at a dominant group, many times it's very difficult for people who are in the dominant group to understand what it's like to be in the subordinate group. And this is in terms of privilege, in terms of power. Here in the United States, the more white you are, the more male you are, the more heterosexual you are, the more able-bodied you are, the wealthier you are, the more privilege you hold. And when you're in the subordinate group, it's typically, people in the subordinate groups will be able to give you their worldview on what life is like on that end. And just very briefly, I think my time's going to run up. But, just very briefly, I just wanted to say that my experience here, I think the last time I was here was for the SB 54 situation. And I think that was a clear...
Thank you.
I'll follow up next time.
We also have a nonverbal card from Doug McDowell, and you didn't want to speak, is that right? But he does support districting. Bev Dransfeld.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time. I just have a question of clarification, mostly for the city attorney. So when we're looking at the 2020 elections, hypothetically, if we do the districting, do all 5 positions end up opening up? And then we have to run a council member from each one. So essentially, the candidates from 2018 do get impacted. I guess that's kind of a question where I know it's all hypotheticals right now, since we're still in the beginning of it. But the other thing that I wanted to address that Matt had brought up is people who live in Cam Heights or live over by the university and they're unable to vote here. With that in consideration, that would I'm assuming this would require an annexation, which would also have to be voted on by SOAR, from my understanding, or through some of that, because no annexations could be made unless voted on by the public. So how that ends up delaying our voting process as well. And I don't know how that plays into all of this. But I know these are all hypotheticals. What Barb brought up are a lot of hypotheticals. So really, it has been proven that there is underrepresentation when it comes to the Latinx community. And there just hasn't been enough there. And yes, Jessica and I ran. And we both had difficulty coming up with the $950. It was a struggle, especially to get it within those 2 weeks. And that's something that, shouldn't have to be a barrier. And I think also with districting, the benefit there is you're able to spend your campaign finances to a smaller amount of people. So you're not trying to hit the entire city where mailers cost so much if you're trying to reach out to each voter, up to $40,000 if you're mailing one mailer to everyone, and that's just one time, and people send them out multiple times. So I think districting can be really good for Camarillo and to help even out the playing field. Thank you.
Terry Bray.
All right, I'm going to just kind of put this straightforward. You know, to assume that any people vote based on race or color is extremely offensive. This country is based on candidates that are best for the job, not based on the color of your skin. A wide majority of white males helped vote in President Obama. I think some people have forgot that. The city of Bell, predominantly Latino, had a predominantly Latino city council who financially raped that city and were thrown out of that city.
Excuse me, Ms. Bray. Ms. Bray, you need to address your comments to the council.
I am addressing it to the council,
No,
but
you're not.
also to the public.
Well, you're not doing that. You're turning your head and looking at the people behind
I'm
you.
sorry I turned my head, but this is a really touchy issue, that representation of people in a public office should not be based on your racial ethnicity of your competency to represent the people at large. And to think that districting is going to make that any different, it will not. Everyone has an equal opportunity to run for a position, and if it's a financial issue, friends, family, or businesses that believe in you will back you. So $1,000 sounds like a lot, but on the aspect of the cost of living, even in this community, where one-bedroom apartment is like $1,800 a month, I don't think that the issue of a $1,000 entry fee, let's call it, is really what we're discussing here. We're discussing who shows up, why they show up, what they're representing, what the people want, not a particular ethnic group. I have personally, and my family, I was raised this way, to vote for the best candidate for the job because we're looking at a long-term investment of representing what the majority of people want and need in this city, in this county, in this state, and in this country. And to hear it segregated, such as what I've heard earlier, to me proliferates the perception of racism. It's supposed to be an all-inclusive process for everybody to have a chance. And if you're running up against obstacles because of your race, because of a disability or such, it's up to you and your supporters to work with that, work around that, and earn those votes from the people that now trust you, not based on what you look like or what your background is. All of it goes into a big melting pot of who you are as a candidate. And that's how I vote, and that's how I believe the majority of people vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak to us on this issue? Seeing nobody come forward, I'm going to answer one thing. We have tried 3 times since I've been on the city council to get the people in the Heights and the estates to be annexed. It's a vote of them. If it's already developed area, it isn't part of the SOAR thing. It's a different process. The ones you talk to might have wanted to come in, but by and large, in the majority, they absolutely do not want to be in the city. At least they've told us that by their vote. I'm going to ask the city attorney to answer at least one other question, and that is, we have people on 2 voting cycles. 3 people 1 year, 2 people 2 years later. How will that be worked in? How does it start? I believe people wanted to know that.
Yeah, that was exactly the question that I wanted to address. The answer is it will depend upon what the decision of the council is on January 9th. If your decision is to proceed to districts, there would be something that would be adopted called a resolution of intent to proceed to districts, and that would set forth a process. and that process would then analyze the districts, how the cycles would work. There's various options that are available. For example, you could change to 5 districts, or you could change to 4 districts with a mayor being elected citywide. We would have to analyze the cycles as well to determine how that is all going to fit together. So what would be contemplated is that between the January 9th date, when we'll be coming back to you with the report and seeking your direction on how to proceed, that for the next several months, and we're not going to, again, rush this just because of some safe harbor provision. We want to get it right, and to get it right, you need to take the time it takes to do it right. So that's why we've taken the time to do it. I know some other cities have acted very quickly. That was their choice, why they chose those paths. That's up to them. But in Camarillo, we've chosen to give this the time that it deserves, because it's a very important decision for the city as to whether to change the election system that's been in effect since this city was incorporated in 1964.